Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I am here with our spiritual family. So happy to be here with you guys. I've spent the weekend in Michigan with my blood family, and it's so nice to get on this call and be with my spiritual family. We're so fortunate to be together. Um, so today we are doing something different. Usually we read through the Bhagavad-gītā and we learn about this ancient wisdom text and its relevance in our lives. But we recently started this new thing where we interview leaders in our community and hear their story and some of their life lessons through the path of spiritual life and bhakti. So today I am here with Nancy Rothman, and she is a very interesting spiritual path because she came in through a 12-step recovery. And now she actually is a leader in that program and has many sponsees that she helps in their journey. So she's really come full circle in her spiritual life and finding bhakti. And so I'm really excited to be here with you, Nancy. Thank you for agreeing to be on the hot seat today. Thank you. So before we start our interview, let's say our prayers. Just offer this up to God. Shakti, you're ready.
Yes. Yes, Hare Krishna, thank you so much for this service. Om Jnana Timarandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavembhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaitya Gadahara Srivasari Guru Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Okay, well, let's just get right into it. I will need to find Nancy on my screen and I will pin you so I can always see you. Give me just one moment. Okay, let's do it. You ready, Nancy? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm a little nervous, but I want to offer my obeisances to you, Radha, for such a beautiful leadership in having this Gita in Action podcast and how much it has broadened my horizons. And no matter how many times I hear the Gita, your wisdom has helped me, and all of the spiritual seekers that are here or listening that have always helped me. The one thing about recovery is I know it's a we program. I, by myself, sort of lost sometimes in the weeds, and to be able to have a community of knowledgeable people to help guide me through life is really very, very important. Um, we spoke a little bit before the call about what I would speak about, and so I hope that you'll find that I just speak my truth and how I ended up in where I am today. So I grew up in a loving household, but I've come to find there was a fair amount of dysfunction along the way, which I think maybe happens in many homes. In any way, I grew up in Methodist religion, and I was, baptized, confirmed. I was in the Methodist Youth Fellowship. An acolyte. I did all that stuff. But when I picked up drugs and alcohol, I didn't need God anymore, really. I mean, maybe God was there, but it was really not, it was not something that I had thought about. Um, and I'll tell you, when I was always very self-conscious about who I was and what I was. And, I wanted people to want me. I really needed people to want me, but I was also defiant. So I wanted to be the person that would be asked to be a cheerleader so that I could tell them to go shove it. I was just like, yeah, I don't want to be part of your group. But I would go between various groups. Like I would, be in the honors classes, and then I'd go behind the school and smoke weed with the burnouts. And I had sort of this dual sort of lifestyle. And but when I drank really for the first time in depth, let's just put it that way, when I was probably 16 maybe, all of a sudden I felt like I could take a breath. My shoulders dropped, and I no longer cared what you thought of me. And it was so freeing, this whole tightness that I felt about, being unworthy almost. Um, and, I didn't have a lot of consequences. I did pretty well. Um, when I went off to college, I started to drink on a daily basis, and it was really a reward for working very hard. I was a chemist. All my other friends were doing more interesting majors, and I was the nerd, so I would party hardy and but study hard, and I graduated with honors, and then I decided that I didn't want to get a job, and I went to graduate school, and I moved to Boston, and uh, and then reality hit because people actually wanted to be in school. I was actually just looking for the fraternity where the parties were continuing, and now my drinking took another turn because I had been very happy-go-lucky and no consequences, and now I became very isolated. And I went into a period of time where I was just very sad and the why me and if only kind of phase of my disease, where if I had a job, if I had a nice apartment, if I had a car, if I had a boyfriend, all this stuff. And I was starting to act out in ways that I wasn't proud of, having relationships that I shouldn't have been in. And 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 it just went on. It was this daily grind, really. And then things changed in 1980, the New Year's Eve, when I went to a party and I met this guy, right? And in those
How
days,
old were you at this point? 1980?
1980, I was 24, 23, 24.
Okay, and so you were
And
in the midst of graduate school.
oh my God, I was always in the midst of graduate school.
Yeah, you were in
And
school.
and 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 all of a sudden, like happens to some people, what was a steady decline in my ability to handle what was happening in life started to like, oh, this isn't so bad anymore. We're having fun, we're going dancing and going to clubs, listening to music, having a great time. And after like a couple of weeks, we said, oh, let's live together. This is what happened in
This
1980.
boy you met at
Yeah,
this
yeah,
party.
we met and lived together. And then I found out that he wasn't an alcoholic.
He wasn't.
No. Oops. Although I really cared about him, he was a really great person. But now came a new phase of my drinking, which was the hiding and concealing. You know, I
Uh,
knew that I could convince Mark that everyone in Boston drank a six-pack of beer a
uh,
day. But for me, I had to have 8 16-ounce beers a day. It's funny because I
um,
was at a detox last night talking to people, and I said, it may have been for you. You had to have 8 glass of wine every night. It could have been that you needed 10 bags of dope. You may have needed a half an ounce of weed, or you may have needed, a case of alcohol. It doesn't matter. There comes to a point when I think in every alcoholic's life where there is a maintenance dose of where you think this will make me be able to exist in my own skin. And so this was my place, but I was like, he's never going to understand those 2 extra beers. And I proceeded to hide and conceal, and it was a mess. And then one day he came home and he said, I went to an Al-Anon meeting last night. And I was like, oh no. No, and I realized that this was a point in time that a turning point for me because I could no longer pretend that there wasn't a problem. So this is when I started to control my drinking, and I started this path of thinking, oh, it's this, it's that. How do I do it? And it was really awful. I had a year of going into slides, binging and trying and doing everything I can. And at one point, he said, I'm going to take all the alcohol out of the house. And I said, what a guy, such a prince. But he didn't believe I would drink the laboratory grade ethanol that we had. And I went on a 3-day bender drinking this laboratory ethanol. And all I could come out of, I would come out of it in and out, and I would think, oops, there's a bulldog. Hold on. That's another story of my life. I got a bulldog. Hold on. Go see Daddy. He's got peanut butter. Daddy has peanut butter. Daddy's got peanut butter. Go
Daddy
see
has
Daddy.
peanut butter.
Go see Daddy. Sorry. Um, so that was a bottom that I hold near and dear, and it was very soon afterwards that I went into a detox, and that's when I learned that I had a disease of the mind, body, and soul. And I knew it was of the body because I was physically sick at this point. I was black and blue all over. I was numb down one side of my body. I'd lost my sense of taste. And I knew it was physically, I understood that, but the mind, oh my gosh, I couldn't do anything without alcohol, either thinking about it, hiding, concealing it, doing whatever I could. And then mentioned that there's a spiritual component. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. So
Wow.
I very quickly realized that I went to a detox and I was able to get away from the alcohol so that I was no longer physically addicted, which was very important. It's very hard for people to just come in and stop. You can go into DTs and all sorts of stuff. So that, I was pumped full of vitamins. I was given food. I started to eat again because I was about 15 pounds lighter than I am now. And I started feeling better, and the color started coming into my world again. That's how I describe it. I had realized that color had been lost.
Now,
Everything
Nancy,
was, yeah.
this part is so difficult for most people. And a lot of people that struggle with drugs and alcohol can never admit that they have a problem. Like my dad,
Yeah.
but it seems like the way you're telling the story, it was almost like fairly easy for you. Was it easy?
Well, no, it wasn't. It was a lot. That year was me struggling and struggling and struggling. But it got to the point when I woke up out of that brownout blackout of that 3 days bender, I knew that I was a drunk from my head to my heart and back up again. I knew it, and I knew that perhaps I could fool Mark. I could fool you. That, oh no, it was just one of those things, a youthful dalliance, but I could never fool myself again. I think this is when Krishna and God, a miracle to me that I knew. And I had choices then. Do I want to live the life of an active drunk, or do I want to be a sober drunk? And I will always be a drunk. There's no, and a lot of people get offended by that. Oh, that's a horrible word, but that's what I was, and what's what I am. And so there has to be that moment of truth that comes. And I had a lot of times that I prayed. I would look in the mirror in the morning and say, not today, not today. And I would have a cup of black coffee and 3 Excedrin. This was what my breakfast was almost every day while I was drinking at the end. I would get into, I was in graduate school. I was a lifer. They would say, oh, the first year, second year, third year, fourth year students and the lifer, please come down to whatever. And I would walk to school, the 2 miles to school, didn't have a car, walk to school, get up there, couldn't function. More black coffee, couldn't function. Have a lunch, I would not drink because I was afraid. Other students were having like a beer with lunch. I couldn't do that. And about 1 o'clock, I would sort of start feeling pretty good, not bad. And I'd start to work. I'd be doing my research. 5, 6 o'clock would come around. I'm feeling great. And I would walk to the package store and get my alcohol. And that
Ah,
happened day in and day out. And I think there comes a point in time that I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
ah.
And I wasn't happy about it. Listen, I wasn't like, oh, now I know the solution and that the solution is I have to stop. I was just like, I have screwed my life up completely.
You couldn't run
This,
away from it anymore. You
I
couldn't
couldn't.
mask it. You were
Yeah,
fairly young, huh? You were in your mid
yeah,
20s.
I got sober just about when I was just turned 26.
Wow. Now, now the whole like when people go to college, it's very normal, quote unquote, like in our culture to party and to drink and then a lot of people kind of grow out of it, they say.
Yeah.
So
And that's
what happens? You know, what's
I don't know. It's a completely a mystery to me why how people can party as much as I did and then all of a sudden don't do it anymore. And I'm like, I don't get it because I just continued on. You know, my husband, who is the guy that I lived with, we've been together for 45 years. He you know, he's very funny because our son is also in recovery. And at Christmas, we have a lot of family and people come. And one Christmas, he said, you know, I had to Sam and I said, I had a beer and a half tonight. We're cleaning up. And we looked at Sam and I looked at each other like, first of all, we don't really care. It's fine, whatever. But what did you do with that half a beer? He said, I didn't drink it just to piss you two off. And so, and so it really is, I don't understand it, how some people can stop, and it's a mystery, but you have to know your own truth.
wow.
It's very important and not to resent people who have that, but I have worked the steps of recovery very hard. And in the 10th step, they have a promise that says that at some point, alcohol neither is nor isn't. We recoil from it like a moth from a flame. It doesn't bother me. I don't have alcohol in my house, but if somebody comes for Christmas and I have family, like 20 people here, we had gathering and people brought 3 bottles of wine. There was a bottle in one glass that was out of the second bottle for all 22 people, and it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. Then they take it home with them. Some
Yeah.
people they can't do that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Um,
So Nancy, when you say I'm a drunk, I'll always be a drunk, what do you mean by that?
that means that I am never cured, that I will always have this disease of alcoholism, but with recovery, with the spiritual solution primarily, that I will live a really happy life, and that if I pick up a drink to tomorrow, I guarantee you won't see me anymore, even on this podcast. You know, um, I will have so much shame and guilt that I would probably not. I was at a detox last night and I was speaking to people and I said, you're in the best place possible and you should be proud of the fact that you're here, even if you were forced to be here. But it could be the beginning. You don't ever have to feel this way. Again, you can have a start. Please go to a meeting, raise your hand, ask for help, get telephone numbers, start to work the program as it's outlined. And uh, a guy came up to me afterwards. He said, I've been doing this for 30 years. And they keep on asking me what's different about this. He's been in like 20 detoxes and he goes in. I said, do you have a sponsor? He said, yeah, he's a good guy. I like him. I said, have you ever worked the steps of recovery? I said, no, I haven't really. I said, well, here you go. You know, Why don't you go on and do something different? So there's a section, there's a paragraph at the bottom of page 25 in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is my favorite paragraph, that states, I'm going to paraphrase it, that states, if you were sincerely alcoholic like we are, you have but two choices. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out your intolerable existence, or two, find a spiritual solution. It doesn't say we're going to drink. That's the thing that really scares me, you know? And there are people, I have heard so many people. I was at a meeting where there was a gentleman who's so proud of the fact that he was coming up on a year of sobriety and really exuding this life. And he said, I had 5 years of sobriety and I was so happy. My family came back together with me. I was moving and doing all sorts of things in my life. And then I picked up a drink. And it took me 30 years to get back here.
Wow.
I hear that often. Maybe not 30 years, that was a lot. But it's not, it's a miracle. And what do we do in Krishna consciousness? If we come and we have this moment where we have this beautiful feeling that we're connected to Krishna, but then we just, go on our way, living our life, not thinking about Krishna, maybe not chanting, maybe not going to classes. Eventually, we start thinking we can do it on our own. I am a higher power. I
Yeah.
know what to do. And I have to stay close. I go to 3 in-person meetings a week minimum. I take meetings to detoxes. I work with between one and I figured out before the call just to say it, 11 people each day in
Wow.
working the steps of recovery by Zoom. I have sponsees in Scotland that I've never met, and Germany and Atlanta and all over the place, and I found my dharma, which
Beautiful.
is recovery. And I really impress upon people that alcohol was not my problem. I mean, people think that, alcohol and drugs is the problem. It was not. It was my solution. It
Oh,
was me that was the problem. Whatever was going on inside of me that was causing me, and a genetic component. I'm Norwegian on both sides. My grandfathers were alcoholics. My father's an alcoholic. My brother's an alcoholic. I have two brothers that aren't. I have a son
now,
that is. It's amazing.
yeah, I know a little bit about the 12-step program, and I seem to remember something like it's about a spiritual disconnection. Like that's the root of the disease. There's a spiritual disconnection. And so in one sense, kind of like you alluded to, we're all disconnected.
Yeah.
And if you are somebody who is, re gravitates towards alcohol or drugs, then like you said, then that's your
Yeah,
solution.
is it spiritual disconnection? I think there's also a lack of authenticity and
Ah,
honesty in the connection. Krishna's been my buddy for it'll coming up on 44 years. That next in 2 weeks I'm celebrating my anniversary, and my son's going to give me my medallion. Um, and I always had this connection before I even knew the name. I had a very good first sponsor who said, when I came in, I said, well, I'm Methodist. Yeah, okay. The second step is came to believe in a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And we argue. And I wasn't insane, and yet I kept on drinking, thinking this time it was going to be different, right? And so, okay, I have to come to believe in something greater than myself. And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, I remember that. But and my first sponsor was a man, Frank, and he said, okay, think of a giant box, and I want you to put everything into this box. And anything you could think of, I closed my eyes and I sat there for quite some time, putting in universes and people and thoughts and verbs and nouns, everything into this box. In the box kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And after some time, he said, okay, now take out of that box what you don't want your higher power to be. And I said, okay, okay, I don't want my higher power to be homophobic, racist, cruel. etc. And I sat for a long time and then said, okay, so that box and everything in it is your higher power. So really, my first vision of a higher power was really sort of the Brahman vision, as well as I knew that there was something inside of me too. So
The
it's the
Brahman
power,
vision. Can you just define that for us?
really in terms of the term with it's the material, the material world, all of the things that I could observe and see, all of my senses, everything, but it was not necessarily this idea of a deity. It was
Of a personal form of God.
personal
It's
forms.
just
But
God
I
is
but I knew
everywhere.
that but I knew that there was something inside of me, an intuition. There was this place where it'd be like, hey, stop. And the third step says became willing to turn our will and made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand God, right? So that box, that name was God, and it's fine. And then we go on in the steps to look at our resentments, our fears, and our sexual inventory, and really digging deep and expressing it to our and how we show it up in our lives so that we can understand the barriers to our relationships, which are usually almost all of our stuff has been the relationship, right? It's like when I was a kid, wanting to be asked to be a cheerleader and tell people to go, you know, do their own thing with that, not wanting to be part of it, or not having a real relationship with God, being reverential and going to church on Easter, but not really having a connection on a daily basis. So, learning about having relationships that were healthy, very, 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 very important to me, and understanding and asking God to remove those barriers. Those are the sixth and seventh steps, are understanding our shortcomings and our defects of character and saying, please help me, as well as please help me to enhance my virtues, which is something I do now more than saying take away my defects. Um, Please enhance my virtues. And eighth and ninth, making amends. Talking to people honestly and saying, listen, I did some things, and mostly what I learned was that I was just very selfish. You know, you can count on me. Oh yeah, can you really? Yeah, I'll show up. No, no, not really. And having resentments because people weren't doing what I wanted. So I had to, talk to people and express, you know, not only my regrets, but how I'm changing, because amends really means change, what I'm doing in my life. Um, the 10th is constantly being aware of it's taking an inventory on a daily basis or a moment by moment basis when things start to go south. What's my part in things? How am I handling things? Why am I got this anger and this fear, etc.? And what's going on? How can I change this? And then 11th, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with a power greater than ourselves, praying only for his will for us and the power to carry that out. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I have to keep on growing this relationship with a higher power. And that's when I came to bhakti. Um,
Wow. It
I've
sounds
been,
like this,
yeah,
it's just the steps you just described. It's kind of like what you said. Two things are resonating, like increase your connection with God and take radical responsibility for the yuck in your life is
oh,
what
yeah,
it's, which is
yeah,
like such a bhakti path.
right.
We
And
have
don't
these,
keep on getting into the yuck,
and don't keep on, and that's the bhakti path. We have these regulations that kind of
right?
keep us on the road, and then these practices to connect with our higher power. And it's so beautiful, the parallels, and this is really such a spiritual path, huh? The
And
12th
and
step.
you can see when this gentleman said, I've got 30 years of I've been doing this for 30 years, but I never worked the steps, because I just explained to you the 11th steps. The 12th step is having had a spiritual awakening as the
Wow.
result of the steps to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So I don't just act the way I act. Um, to you guys, or when I go to a meeting. I try to do it when I go to the supermarket. I say hello to everybody, and when somebody's in front of me in the express lane with 30 items. I don't freak out. I'm just like, okay, maybe they've got a sick child at home that they have to get home to. Maybe they were told to get in this lane. Let me be generous and kind, right? So I have to live all this as the best I can. But
And
when
is that what you would describe as a spiritual awakening, or can you describe your spiritual awakening to us a little bit?
spiritual awakening is when I knew I was a drunk. That was the first one.
Oh,
Heart
okay.
and head.
But that's the 12th step, right?
Yeah, well, I have a lot of spiritual awakenings. I've had many, many. Almost every single day, I look up and I see the sun, and I think, Krishna. And I see my 4-year-old grandson looking at me, and I'm like, Krishna. So spiritual awakening to me is something that I experience all the time, and it's my um, the cloudiness that the veil that will come across my face that will, or my eyes, that will stop me from being and be like, oh, I, me, mine. The things that we've been talking about so much in these chapters that we've been reading in the Gita in action. When I start thinking that it's my world and I have to, I'm owed something, all of a sudden I get into a place of, why me? Why is this happening? Why am I getting, I can't, my limbs are hurting. I sit and meditate in the morning, and then I can't get up out of a cross-legged position. What's going on? And so, but there's a lot of searching that I've done. I went through and read a lot of things like Emmett Fox, The Sermon on the Mount. That's a classic AA. Um, Emmett Fox was one of the spiritual leaders for some of the founders of AA. Reading the Be Here Now by Ram Dass, Eckhart Tolle, reading the New Testament with a group of people, going through and starting to search and question. And then about 14 years ago, I think it was, I saw a little ad for a class on the Bhagavad-gītā, and I had had a friend every time, Weisenheimer, every time we were studying something, he would say, oh, it sounds like the Dhammapada and the Bhagavad-gītā. And I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. Dude, get out of my face. And I saw this and I said, okay, let me go to this class. And it was with Venkata Bhatta, who is, I knew him as Vineet Chandra, who was the director of Hindu Life at Princeton University. And I went every Wednesday night. And the minute we got to 7-8, I am the taste of water, the radiance of the sun and the moon, I said, oh my God, my box is Krishna. It was one of those moments that I was like, and then I learned about it, and since then, I have been, taking classes and slowly but surely coming to Krishna consciousness, I think, awakening. I know my dharma is recovery and trying to bring Krishna consciousness into recovery. All my sponsees know that I'm in a Krishna consciousness, but I respect all their paths. So, for example, I'm reading One Breath at a Time with a group of people, which is the Buddhist approach to the 12 steps. And because I need to honor all those paths. To me, my spirituality has to be attraction rather than promotion. And I'm not going to convert anybody to my way of thinking. My way of thinking is probably not the same as anybody else. It's just like Gabor Mate says about no two kids have been raised in the same family. But over time, it brought me to, for years, I was part of the Bhakti recovery group, and it brought me to working the steps of recovery through the adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families. And now I work a lot with people who maybe don't even identify themselves as alcoholics, but I do help them with the family dysfunction that has caused them so much pain, to help them understand and to go into forgiveness and help them on their path. So
Yeah.
yeah.
This is so interesting that you I so much appreciate. I think everybody here maybe really appreciates just how broad-minded you are, and repeating on the thread here, attraction, not promotion, which is so beautiful. But I'm also curious, like what because it seems like you really studied a lot of different paths. What attracted you to Krishna Bhakti?
Well, really, it came down to having a loving teacher, the first exposure to it, which was being the director of Hindu life at Princeton University. My first um, guru, Venkat, still a good dear friend. Um, Always questioning and being willing to have me both of because I brought that Weisenheimer friend with me to these meetings. You want to do this? You can. So we would talk a lot about recovery and how, boy, this sounds just like, like when Arjun is throwing down his bow. We're like, yeah, this was step zero for me. I have to surrender. This, I don't know what to do. Help me. And so many things paralleling the 12 steps that we said, this was the opening that I needed to have a path that would complement my 12 steps of recovery, because I can't just come. You don't get me. You guys don't get me. You don't understand. There's a phrase in it that there's not a cloud in the sky. It's a beautiful day, and I'm going to do something to wreck my world. I can go into a meeting and somebody say, "How are you doing?" And I say, "Oh, I'm fine." And they'd say, "No, BS. Tell me what's really happening." And I would be able to express it. There have been times that, my husband, that guy that went to that Al-Anon meeting and still has gone to Al-Anon, will look at me and say, I think you might want to go to a meeting because he knows he doesn't understand me. But
Wait, is your husband Mark?
yeah, yeah,
Your husband's Mark. That's the
yeah.
boy you met.
That's the
Oh,
boy I
wow.
met. That's the boy that I lived with, and then in time, and lots of great things happened in the meantime. I had 8 years of infertility, and ectopic pregnancies, and blah blah blah. Finally, IVF. I had 3 eggs that were able to be harvested after all these injections. Only 3 were harvested. One could fertilized. One was put back. It was put in my uterus because my fallopian tubes had been destroyed, and that's my son, right? Now that's
Wow.
a Krishna miracle, right? And so,
Amazing.
and the fact that he knew about recovery. So, like, this is a family disease. So my father got sober when he was 50. I got sober when I was 26, and Sam got sober at 17. He's coming up on his 16th anniversary. And he never had a legal drink, and his drug of choice was heroin or anything that you had. And I adore addicts. And I came to realize, I think Krishna Bhakti's made me realize that Krishna loves me no more, no less than the addict dying with a needle in their arm right now, right?
Yeah.
Which is so much different than what I perceived the message was when I was growing up in other religions. The Methodist faith was just so lovely, and so, but the message I had was that good works are you're in favor. That if you're
Ah,
doing good, you're good in God's eyes. I didn't feel this punishing so much, but I had to be a good girl. And I think that's why when I started drinking and using, I didn't think that I needed a higher power, you know.
yeah. So, so what I'm getting, tell me what you think of this, Nancy. What I'm getting is that we all have these needs. We have need for approval. We have need for acceptance. We have all these needs, and we look for them in different ways. And really, what we're all searching for is God, is this
Yeah.
unconditional love, this unconditional compassion, acceptance, connection. And and some people like yourself are maybe genetically dispositioned to if they turn to something like alcohol or drugs to fill that hole in their heart, they get hooked and it brings them so low, right?
It
Which
brings us, and people get hooked on all sorts of things. They get
uh-huh.
hooked on social media. They get hooked on shopping. They get hooked on food. They get hooked on relationships. They become codependent. There's so many things that we can do to distract us from this relationship. But I do feel that if I have this real honest, authentic connection with Krishna, when I can really talk to Krishna about what's going on, because there have been times when I've been in the dark night of the soul, that I go into this place where, I mean, I did for initially, I felt like I was betraying Jesus when I started Krishna Bhakti. It was like, I'm feeling really bad. And when I then moved into feeling, well, wait a minute, I can do it all. I can have it all. I can respect it all. I can love it all. I can learn from it all rather than judging everything for being different. And I had to have one path and one thought process. Um, the strict, I would not be good in an ashram. I just know that. I would be like, why? I would be constantly pushing the boundary, you know, and so I know all that, but I also think what happens is if I have a really authentic relationship with Krishna, I start to have incredibly authentic relationships with people.
Wow.
I don't need to necessarily, I sat from 6:30. I say my rounds faster than maybe I should, but from 5 to 6:30, 6:45, doing my 16 rounds. I've been doing 16 rounds for about 6 years. Um, and, and, but that's not where I have to live. I really believe faith without works is dead. I have to be out in the world and doing God's work by
Now,
just,
now, can we talk about that a little bit?
yeah,
About your sponsoring people?
yeah.
You said you sponsor, like you have up to 11 meetings a day, people all over the world. I'm curious, like, what have you learned from helping others that you don't think you could have learned by just focusing on your own recovery?
Um, there's so many things that people have said. Their experiences have helped me to really, I think, become gentler and less judgmental. You know, um, there was a point in time when it's like, oh, if you don't do it my way, you're going to drink again, or you're to, and I think in the harshest sense, that sometimes is a message even in bhakti that I'll get, from some of the literature and the purports or some of the teachers. And I'm like, yeah, not happening with this lady. And so instead of taking that, I get a broader perspective and I say, no, no, that's not the way all people in Bhakti talk. That's not the same message that comes across with everybody. And I also feel that I can see a light come on in people's eyes. That all of a sudden life is worth really living to its fullest. It's not something to endure. And when that happens, you're like, it's almost my addiction is seeing somebody become free of all the third step is relieve me of the prayer is the third step. Prayer says relieve me of the bondage of self. I was so bound, and to be able to be free and to see people get free of their worries, their concerns, and learning that there is something greater than themselves. And it can be the great outdoors. It can be a group of drunks. It can be, good orderly direction. It can be Brahman. Krishna allows us to go in all different directions, and still say, as long as it's not me, that I'm not my own higher power, then I have the ability to go forward.
Wow, beautiful. Is there a teaching, as this is the Gita podcast, is there a teaching from the Bhagavad Gita that you find yourself using when life gets difficult?
I think well, I'm very bad at memorizing things. So I think that what I really think of is I'm not my body. I'm not my mind. I think of that Krishna loves me more than I could ever love him. If I take one step toward Krishna, he'll run a mile towards me. And I really also think of, because you're non-envious of me, let me let me tell you this confidential information. And those are the lessons from the Bhagavad-gītā or even from the Srimad Bhagavatam that help me to see that this path is something that I can get with. I I have a guru, Rukmini Devi Dasi, and um, lots of other gurus like yourself, Radha and Kastuba Das and Radha Swami and Vaisheshika Prabhu. Can go down through lists and lists of people that I listen to, that I really feel I learn lessons from. But I have to just keep an open mind. And that's, I think, what working with lots of people have done, is really let me open up and be open-minded and find out new lessons, and what can I gain from this situation. Even if it's hard, if it's difficult. For example, Mark has been diagnosed with Parkinson's. It's been 11 years. And what I thought was going to be happening, people say, oh, can you come to this retreat? Rukmini's always, come to India. I'm like, I can't leave him. I
Oh,
I can't do this. I can't just take off necessarily. I can leave him for some time, but a few days. But I've had those experiences. I've been to India 3 times, and had wonderful experiences. But I have a duty, you know. And people are like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, everybody's got something. Everybody's got something. And the other day I said, Mark said to me, I said, how you doing? He said, do you want to know the truth? And I said, no, I don't. I said, there are people that are suffering with cancer, with depressions, with anxieties. We have each other, and stop being sorry for yourself. I'm not sorry for you. And he's like, okay, okay, on I go, onward home, right?
wow.
So, we don't know and Bhakti gives me that. I don't know what I'm handed. Instead of, as we've said in this podcast, life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. And what can I gain from this experience, and how can I show up in the most authentic way? Right?
Wow. You know what's something incredible about your journey that's striking me is that you came to sobriety pretty early in life, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
And so you went down I mean, you were struggling with alcohol for a handful of years, but now for the past, what, 40 years, you said
44. Yeah.
you've been helping people.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's just such a gift that, for the largest part of your life, you've really been helping people. And
But it is a real gift. This is Krishna's mercy, you know. Um, I think, the lessons I've learned is that I can do all of the studying I want. I can memorize slokas, which I can't. I can I can do all of that work, but unless I have Krishna's mercy, if it doesn't move from intelligence into knowledge, that it's Krishna's mercy that I really feel the lessons coming into daily practice. Because that's the connect, right? If I'm looking for a connection, do I look at somebody like Pam and say, or Shraddhanjali, or Martine, or you, or Shakti, or all these people that are in front of me? Do I look at them and say, yeah, there's Krishna, there's Krishna, I see Krishna, right?
wow.
Uh, and I think that's I'm really in a happy place, but you never know. In a couple of weeks, the light will start to fade. It will start getting dark, and I can go into the little bit of the dark night of the soul of, oh, this is so hard. I can't do this. And what I do is I try to step up more meetings. I pray more, maybe chant more. I try to take a new class. I'm taking a class on with the Vermont Sangha and in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I go to this other class over here. I go over there. I try to take classes, and sometimes I like them, sometimes I don't like them at all. I'm sitting there going, wah wah wah. People are talking. I'm like, I get a message somebody puts on. I was like, I don't know what they just said. It must have been profound because everybody liked it. I have to go back and listen to it again. Like I don't get it sometimes. So I just be kind to myself and do what I can.
To try. Wow. All right, last question here. For somebody who's sitting here thinking, okay, this is really inspiring and nice to hear, but I don't really struggle with drugs or alcohol. So how does this really let's what would you say to them?
Well, I'd say that's great. I'm happy for you. Really happy for you. But I'll tell you, I don't think that anybody has ever come out of a family that didn't have dysfunction.
Mm,
Something that you felt, wasn't right in some way, that there was some path that led you to a place where I don't feel I need a connection to something greater than myself. I think that if you believe that you are managing your life perfectly without the help of anything, um, I'd say pause a minute and just think about that. Is that true? Go to the ocean and look at the waves. Do you think that you're more powerful than that ocean? Do you think that you're more powerful than the sun rising and setting? Do you think that maybe you could open your heart to something that's bigger than yourself and just try it? What is it going to hurt? Come to the Gita in Action podcast. Come with us and one verse at a time and help each other to go deeper and deeper and have a deeper sense. So you don't have to have addictions and you don't have to hit a bottom. Some people hit a bottom because they've just been in relationships that have just been so painful that they can't do anything about them. And sometimes it's the bottom of the relationship with themselves. It doesn't have to be with somebody else. And so why not try something different?
wow. So in this way, the path to recovery is really the spiritual path.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. It's incredible how you took something that is so painful in life and have made it so beautiful by helping yourself and helping others. It's
Oh, thank
incredible.
you so much. And all of you, everybody that's here have had a part of that for me. So thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Nancy. Does anybody have any burning questions for Nancy that they would like to share or ask her? Shakti?
Hare Krishna. Um, wow, Nancy, you are such an inspiration. Just listening to your story. Um, I already felt like you were a beautiful uh, woman, friend, mentor. Um, and now I even feel luckier to be so close to you because you're really special. I personally know how you feel now. How you feel? I was in a I had an eating disorder. I was anorexic and bulimic, and I was in about 4 different hospitals. So we went through a lot of the same um, things. I went to actually the program. I didn't go to OA. I didn't relate there, but I went to NA and AA a lot. And if without if not for them, I too would have been dead. Um, but I understand, and you're just so beautifully strong and so wonderful. I guess it's the only question I might have. Well, there's so many, but one that comes to mind is, like once I got, for me again, it's like a little bit different because you can't not eat. right? You can stop smoking or stop heroin, but you can't not eat. So you have to figure out how not to throw up, how not to starve yourself, but find a place in the middle, which was really hard. And but like I know there's a lot of, for me, and I don't know, I'm asking for you, was there a lot of painfully disgusting behavior that you maybe did that you hated yourself for, or had a heart or didn't like about yourself, and if so, how were you able to forgive yourself?
Yeah, that's, eating disorders are so hard, just as you explained, with the fact that we have to keep on eating. But now we have to do something about the bulimia and the anorexia and stuff, and very, very hard, where treatment is really, I think, working with people that know how to treat this properly. But I still have issues. I was raised with a mother who really didn't want me. You know, she had had a family already, and then I was born. I was the oops baby. It was, and she just was done mothering and didn't want this. So I will go keep on sometimes, not right now, I'll tell you why, but I would go into shame. I get a shame hit, they call it. That they even recently, where all of a sudden the Rolodex of shame comes up. You're not good enough. You remember when you lost that job, how you failed at this, how you failed at that, and start feeling this way. And I had a sponsee who's a therapist. I had said, because I'm honest with people, what's going on with me? I talk about it to everybody. I'm talking to you guys, right? And it said, I keep on having this shame hit. And she said, oh, that's because you're comfortable with it. You like this. You actually get something out of this. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I don't want this anymore. And I brought it to Krishna. In the morning, I said, please just take this shame from me. I know I don't deserve this anymore. You don't deserve me to be in this place. Please take this from me. And it really expressed it openly and honestly. And doing that for quite some time, I haven't really gone into that same place. That I had to bring all that negative stuff. And there are times when things aren't going right that I will say, I, I can admit it to you guys because you're family, but I would write the FU letter to Krishna. You know, Cross the top of the letter, what you doing to me? How are you doing this to me? F you, F you, F you. And by the end, I'm like, I'm sorry I cursed. But I stream of consciousness to get it out because I have to be honest in my feelings. I can't hold them in. I can't say I should not feel this way. I have to know that my feelings are real, that I have to be able to express it to people who understand it, and then to really pass it along. I might need other professional help. I've been to therapists, I've been to psychiatrists. I might need something that's going to help me on this path because if I'm blocked, maybe I can't hear Krishna's lessons. So it's very important to say, Krishna put people and gave training to people to do all sorts of things. But if we're feeling bad about ourselves, Krishna loves us unconditionally. And I often think if I start putting myself down or somebody else down, I think, do I really want to slap Krishna across the face? Am I willing to do that to him? Or can I be sitting here and allow his mercy and his love to flow through me?
Wow. Beautiful.
Thank you,
Beautiful answer.
Nancy.
So connected. I think we have one more question before we end here from Julan Yatra. Are you still here? Julan Yatra? Hear your question and then we'll end for the day.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Nancy, for this class. This is actually the first time I'm here live because I've been traveling and I just started listening. And it's funny, I'm in this class because my dad actually was an alcoholic and drug addict basically my whole life. And he got sober about 10 years ago. Now, I would say about yeah, I'm 30, so I was around like 18, so maybe like 12 years ago. So, um, I resonated with a lot of your story, and there's a lot more I could say, but I know we're kind of at the end of time, so maybe I'll get to talk to you again soon. Um, but I actually just wanted to ask maybe like your something that I went to like adult children of alcohol therapy growing up, and something that one of my therapists told me was that, when someone gets sober, like there's alcoholism and you take out the alcohol, but they still have the ism that kind of stays with them throughout their lives. And so to this day, sometimes I feel like I still deal with my dad's like ismness because, there's still that like post alcoholic personality that they've kind of adopted, I guess. So I guess my question for you is just kind of maybe if you have any advice or like the lens, looking through the lens of someone who grew up only really knowing my dad as this alcoholic. And now, the past 10 years of my adult life, I've been trying to kind of reintegrate him into my life and accept him and forgive him, which has been relatively easy for me, which I know is all just Krishna's mercy. So I guess kind of like, I guess my question is if you have any advice or something for a child who's been dealing with, um, yeah, that sort of situation.
Well, probably the thing that I would recommend is you help yourself. You know, work on yourself to be able to accept that you're never going to change your family. The three C's of Al-Anon is you didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. And so you sit back and if your father's not working a program, meaning he's not doing the 12 steps, he may be going to meetings and he's abstinent, that can be a real problem. This is the spiritual bypass. So like, oh no, I'm now in the Hare Krishnas, I'm a Hare Krishna. I don't need anything more. This is what it is. I think that's dangerous. I think that Krishna can be everything in my world except I need other alcoholics. The first step says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Need to be going to meetings. I need to still be with people who understand how my crazy mind would work. And it's beautiful if we have great deep spirituality. That's so important, but it can't be all for me because that can kill me. That could kill me because I would just feel guilty and sinful. You've got regulative principles, and obviously I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm like, and I sit here and say, well, okay, if Eudaster hadn't lost everything by gambling, would that have been a regulative principle? I guess not. I guess that was all Eudaster's fault. When I go into all this stuff, but I think it's really important for you to know, let me take care of myself as an adult child. Let me know that there is a spiritual solution for me. And I say to my dad, hey dad, don't forget to go to meetings. Maybe you should think about if your sponsor's not taking you through the steps, maybe you should do that. You can make those suggestions, or you can just sit back and say, hey, he's not drinking, he's not causing chaos as much as it was. Um, the alcohol was the solution. It was not the problem. And we sometimes think, if my father loved me enough, he would have just quit. He had no choice. Once I put alcohol in my body, I don't have choices anymore. Once I take it away and I find a spiritual solution, I have choices. So,
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you, Nancy.
thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Radha.
Thank you. And Nancy, I think if anybody has further questions or wants to reach out to Nancy personally, I speak for Nancy, but I think you're very open to that, right,
Yeah,
Nancy?
absolutely.
Yeah, so she could put her information on the thread or email or on our overall thread and
Yeah, I'll put it in the overall thread and you can post it wherever. I'm happy being contacted.
wonderful. Thank you, Nancy. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming and sharing and being such an inspiring leader in our community. We're very honored to walk this path with you, and it was wonderful spending the morning with you.
No,
Thank you.
my obeisances to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all, and I'll see you on Thursday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.